All right, boys and girls, and thank you for tuning in. This is your friend Yarek, who buys real estate. Today, I have an amazing guest on our podcast, Dan, the real estate man, Daniel Harvey, his full name, and he's been in the business for quite some time. He's been able to acquire over 60 doors currently active, and he's working on a pipeline of over 100 doors. So this man right here has definitely has some experience, some knowledge, and he's going to be sharing some really interesting stuff with us. Thank you again, Dan, for coming out and sharing your knowledge with us and taking the time out. So I'd love to see what exactly, what we have in store for the viewers today.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, Yark. I appreciate it.
All right, awesome. So again, guys, who are tuning in, make sure you ask questions, even if after this live is over. We'll make sure to get back to you, whatever questions you might have. This is the time for you to ask whatever question you might have. Most likely somebody else has, so don't go ahead and ask those questions. Don't be scared. Don't feel that any question is a good question. So yeah, today's we're going to be talking about multifamily, right? A lot of people understand that multifamily is a great business in regards to real estate. And why is that? Is because you have more than one door paying your rent, right? So in case somebody moves out, you have somebody else covering your quote unquote liability that you want to make into an asset. What is an asset? An asset is something that you don't have to pay yourself, right? And Dan has figured out a way where not only does he focuses in multifamily, and but he actually converts it, right? So he's taking horse for stables, he's taking churches, he's taking different types of real estate that other people would be afraid of or don't even have the vision, right? The vision to scale it to a different level. And he's taken that niche and he's found himself as a character that loves this creativity, right? He's an outside thinker. He's thinking about how exactly can he convert and how can he take things that others are looking over and make it into a diamond, right? Diamond in the rough, and how do you make it cash flowing and so forth. So for those tuning in, again, thank you guys. I'd love to hear from you guys, wherever you guys are located. Go ahead and put those comments in. And Dan, how has COVID been treating you? How is 2020, right? What's going on? I know you have rentals active right now, over 60,
Yeah,
and you're working on 100 units. So that's super impressive, brother.
thank you. So, how has COVID been treating me? Man, it's been a year of ups and downs, um, and mostly emotionally.
Yep.
So when COVID hit, like any other investor, you just didn't know. And when you have that uncertainty, that breeds anxiousness, right? So I had a whole plan for this year. Every year, I'm planning out what I'm going to do for the next year, generally in quarter four. So like right now, I'm planning out 2021.
Awesome.
No one could have ever predicted COVID would come and hit like how it has. So there were rumblings of COVID, but I've been through a few of these things, right? Well, nothing like COVID, obviously, but
Right.
bird flu, H1N1, a whole bunch of things that basically wound up being nothing, right?
Yep.
And quite frankly, that's what I thought this was going to be. I'm like, oh, this is gonna blow over like everything else. Wow, was I wrong about that? So my immediate um, um, concern was, okay, will my tenants pay me? Right.
Right.
My tenant base mostly have jobs where they need to physically be somewhere.
Got it.
Right. So I understood that my tenant base is going to be affected by any shutdowns.
Right.
Right. Secondly, I was concerned about banks. Will banks continue to
Lending.
lend money?
Yeah.
Right. Because when things are uncertain, banks don't like that. Right. They don't
Yep.
want to lend money when things are not very clear, and when you have a situation where tenants may not pay.
Yep.
And as you know, the leveraging part is a big part of my business. So I was very, very concerned. So for the first part, dealing with the tenants, what I decided to do Because there was mixed reactions from the landlord community. Some people, I think, kind of stuck their head in the sand and just kind of hoped. Some people, I felt, took like really. I'm sorry, what was that?
They're just winging it, seeing, you know, if they can get away with certain things.
Yeah, I think, and then there were some people who they decided to take a hard line stance, which I thought was an odd way to handle it. What I decided was that I was not going to take a hard line stance. You'll pay me no matter what, right? What I decided to do with my office manager was, okay, how can we get in front of this? How can we help our tenants? How can we make it as easy as possible for them to pay us, right? And so what we was that we would create a packet, a help packet, if you will, of everything that they would need. So help with paying rent, obviously that helps me out, but help with paying their utility bills, help with paying for food. So it was help all the way around. And we reached out to all of our tenants. We gave the packet to everyone. And then we reached out to people and said, hey, listen, if you have an issue, or if you think you're going to have an issue, please reach out. And so we had some people that reached out, and we helped them navigate certain things, helped them figure out how to fill out forms to get benefits, how to, like, what other organizations are out there helping pay rent outside of the city. So we did all that legwork for them, and we made it super, super easy. And so we are actually probably better than pre-COVID right now as far as rents go, because a lot of our tenants, they took advantage of what the city offered, what some agency offered. So we actually got paid ahead some, because sometimes they would pay like 3 months out.
Right.
And quite frankly, I only really have one problem tenant, and they were a problem tenant pre-COVID.
Right. Okay.
So they pretty much just stayed consistent.
That sounds so pretty much it sounds like you have a system in place, right? So you do the system and you actually make it active. You went out and found whatever grants are out there, right? Whatever possibilities and whatever the city is helping out, whatever the government is helping out, you know, there's a lot of stimulus packages going around. So you went out and actually provided this already information out there that some people might not know or be aware of. So that's actually a really smart thing that you did. And by having a system in place, you were able to capture it. So let's start with the first question. Pretty much, you know, how did you get into that system? And, you know, before the system, you know, the first question is, how did you get started in real estate? What was the beginning for you?
How did I get started with real estate? So I am an accidental investor. I tell people that all the time. I never had dreams of owning real estate. It wasn't anywhere I saw in my future. So I was working for SEPTA. As many people know, I was on the railroad. You know, I worked on trains, worked on the wiring of trains and all that sort of stuff, troubleshooting problems with trains. But I also was a promoter, which some people don't know. And I promoted events and started off doing parties, small parties, built that up to doing like small stadiums. So we would rent out stadiums that fit like 10,000 people. And we would bring in entertainers. We would bring in basketball players. We were doing, if you ever saw N1, like the street baller game sort of thing, we were doing that pre-N1. So, and I actually have a funny story, but probably don't have enough time for it. But I actually met with N1 even before they were doing that. You know, I feel like they really just kind of just stole our whole style.
You might have shared too much.
What was that?
You probably shared too much with it.
Absolutely, I did. Yeah. So I was 19 when we got up to doing like 2000. I mean, when we got up to doing, so we did one game at St. Joe's Hawk House, so right at St. Joe's, which I think is like, I don't know, 5,000-6,000 seater. Had it sold out. People were outside. It was crazy. I was just really young. I was 19 when I was doing that. And I just didn't have any mentors or somebody to really direct and guide me, because we really had something, right? We really had a really good product, but I just didn't have that. And I had a person there. So anyway, so, you know, I had
yeah. So then you mentioned, mentor, like that's something interesting that, I personally, like, I went through college, and when I graduated, I never took any internships or that. And I learned that I had to pay for my mistakes. I learned that I had to pay, through all this experience, through my money, through my time. And yeah, like, definitely, having a person that can mentor you is definitely something. And again, like, you're definitely one of my mentors that I've been to your boot camp, and it's definitely been interesting. Certain things I learned, how you do things. And one thing you definitely shared was amazing with me was, you got to find your character, right? You got to find out who you are, and exactly go for that. So it sounds like then you're, how you got started real estate prior to that. Marketing is definitely your thing. You did a lot of marketing prior to get into real estate, and did a lot of, promotions.
I did, but what really got me started was it was my mother. So again, I had the job, I had this business. I was really young. I was in my early 20s. I was making money, and she didn't want me to waste my money like how most young guys do, right? Spending it on stuff that at this point would not be worth anything. And so she was like, "Why don't you buy real estate?" And again, I had no interest. But I was like, well, that's my mom. I'll make her feel good. I'll go out there and look, and I'll let her down, later on. And yeah, and then what happened was, through the process of me looking at properties, I said, you know what, this wouldn't be a bad third income stream, right? I had my job, I had the other business, and then I could be a landlord. And so yeah, the first property I ever purchased was a bank-owned duplex in West Philly on 57th and Hunter. Simple strategy I had at the time. I had like 25 grand saved up, and the house cost 20. I was like, oh, well, wow, that works. Right? And interestingly, I had no rehab money. I didn't know how to rehab, right? I didn't know any of that stuff, but I just figured it out. But that's how I got started.
Okay. Wow. So pretty much, you got started from all kinds of, it sounds like you were an entrepreneur from the beginning. You had it in your system, you had it in your blood. And like, a lot of times people say, well, I'm not an entrepreneur. And not everybody is. And sometimes you are, sometimes you find out in an early age, sometimes you find out at a later age. And it kind of goes into, you mentioned you got into SEPTA and you started working for somebody else, going from promotions, figuring out how to make cash flow, how to make money yourself. And then, so you got into a job, and your mom kind of helped you out in a way where got into real estate, and it was accidental to you. So the next question goes into, how'd you make it a full-time job, right? Why did you leave your full-time job and go into real estate as a full-time job? Well, what was the tricking point for you? What was the change?
Sure. So, just to kind of preface this, so the way I was raised was to get a really good job and hold on to it for dear life, right? That was it. That was the goal. Get that good job. And fortunately, I got that good job really early. Like, I was 17, so I have this good job. It's a union job, a pension, benefits. It's the whole nine. So I'm playing around with this real estate. So like I told you, I bought that building for 20 grand. Fast forward about a year and a half later, I rented it out. I hated that because I didn't know how to be a landlord. And I wound up selling that property, and I sold it for 87.5 or something like that.
Right.
And I'm like, damn, right? So I'm like, okay.
That's money.
Yeah, I'm like,
this is money.
And then next, I bought a triplex from a burnt out landlord. Basically, they gave me every credit you can think of just to close, right? And one of the few
motivated.
One of the few closings that I've ever done that I walked out with money, because they were just like, whatever, just make sure this guy closes. And before, house hacking, was a thing, or was a term, I should say, I decided, well, I was just doing things that just kind of made sense to me. I was like, well, I can live in one of these apartments. I can rent the other two apartments out. And so I had bought that apartment. I had bought that building for like 76.5. And I met my wife and I moved out of there. And the tenant that moved into my unit bought that building off of me like 2 years later for like $180,000.
Wow.
Again, I'm like, damn, right? Like, man, I'm doing pretty good with this. And I have no idea what I'm doing, right? You know, if I read some books, I may be dangerous. And so so that's what I decided. I said, okay. And this was about the time I turned 30. And I said, by the time I'm 35, I'm going to leave SEPTA, right? That's it. I'm going to like there's something here. I'm going to leave SEPTA. And originally my reason or why I wanted to leave SEPTA, it was financial. It was a financial reason. And so I did. I quit SEPTA 3 days before my 35th birthday, Christmas of 2014. But when I left SEPTA, it was not strictly a financial reason. That's not why ultimately I left. Ultimately, because I was making good money then. I was probably at that point, I was probably doing about $20,000 a month just in rent, and I still had my job.
Right. Wow.
You know, so I could have rode that wave. Like I could have just continued to do that.
So then before we move over, so you mentioned you were making a good amount of money every single month and you were still working full-time job. So for those who are watching here, for those who are thinking like, hey, I have a full-time 9 to 5, how do I get into real estate? Is it really excuses that people are making that not get into real estate? Or is it, you know, what exactly was your secret that you were able to do a full-time job? And as I understand, you worked heavily. You took overtime. You never took any, you know, never took time off. You never pretty much, you always hustled. So what exactly, how did you find that balance, right, between your 9 to 5 and having a rental stable properties, plus you were probably renovating things at the same time and so on?
Yeah, so I take the word balance out of there. There was absolutely no balance. I was just going hard. So we have to make some things clear, right? There, and I don't want to get too off point, but I want to make this point because I think people have a fantasy of the way things go.
Yeah.
If you want to become financially free, not just make a lot of money, but be financially free. That is something most people never achieve. They may make a lot of money, but they're not financially free. If you want to be financially free, you're going to have to sacrifice something. If you think you're going to do it in this comfortable environment, it's going to be easy. It's not. So yes, I worked my butt. I used to work crazy overtime. I was buying rentals. I put all of the money back into the business. I never spent the time. I didn't go on a bunch of trips. My mind was focused. By the time I'm 35, I'm out of here. That was it. Everything revolved around that decision, period. That was my guide in life for 5 years. If it did not make that goal make sense, I didn't do it.
Right.
And so that's what people have to really understand. Like, if you want to be financially free, you're asking a lot of yourself. It's possible.
Yep.
And it is achievable, but you're going to have to sacrifice something. You got to sacrifice. You're going to have to sacrifice nights out. Everybody wants to hang. I can't hang. I gotta go read this book. I gotta go watch this video. I gotta go to this property. You know, some things you're going to have to sacrifice, or maybe a lot of things.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it will get you to where, or should get you to where you want to be at, right? So I just really want to drive that home, because too often I see people just sort of flippantly talking about quitting their job, and like that's a nothing thing. That's a big thing. And so you should think that out and understand that it's going to come with some real sacrifice.
Then what was your strategy, right? What was your goal? Like, why did you quit your job, right? Meaning, like, you said to yourself, by 35, I'm going to quit my job, but you had like certain things you wanted to accomplish before that. So, you know, what were the things that you set? Because like a lot of times people don't realize, but you got to set goals, right? Instead of dreams, dreams are great, but goals are important.
Yes. And goals hold you accountable. So 35, I will tell you, quite honestly, 35 was completely arbitrary. I just felt like 5 years was long enough. I felt like, 5 years is long enough. I can definitely figure it out. And when I got there, I had to commit to that, to leaving, because that was difficult, right? I was 18 years at a job. I was making good money. This was not like a Mickey D's job, right?
Right.
It's really good money. It's really strong pension. It was full benefits. So, but what the ultimate reason why I left SEPTA had nothing to do with money, because I was already making decent money. I wanted for myself, I wanted to know what was my potential. And I knew there was no way I would reach my full human potential working at SEPTA. It was impossible. No matter how much money I made, it didn't matter. What is my potential? What can I do? What can I be? And that's why I left.
So pretty much it wasn't about X amount of money. It wasn't about, having X amount of money in the bank or X amount of money every month. It was pretty much what exactly can you, how can you move and how can you grow within yourself, and then, people around and go forward. And it kind of goes into our next question, which is pretty much, what real estate strategies have you used, while you were working? Prior you were working, you were getting properties at the age of 30, and then by 35, you left your 9 to 5 to fully focus on real estate, right? To be an investor, to not even be a real estate investor, but to be a real estate business, right? And what are the strategies have you used to be a real estate business?
Yeah, so first we'll walk through the actual real estate strategies, because people, your viewers should understand this is a fluid situation, right? So as the economy changes, you may have to change your strategies, right? And so that's why I'd say when you're listening to people speak about real estate strategies, make sure that it's something that works right now, right? You're not listening to people who were doing it even 4 years ago is way too long. 3 years ago, things changed so much. So when I left SEPTA, when I built up my rental properties, it was right after the real estate collapse, right? And so my primary way of finding properties were bank-owned properties through the MLS. They were plentiful. They were all over the place. There were so many bank-owned properties. I remember I could look at a property. I could look at a bunch of properties. So many bank-owned properties. I could look at them. I could walk through them. I could really, dig into the numbers, really think about it. And 3-4 days later, make a lower offer and still get the property. I did that for years. I was able to do that probably and do it effectively solely until about 2014 is when it really started to change. There were a lot less bank owned because a lot more investors started to get back into the market. You started getting these large Wall Street buyers buying up everything. So things wouldn't even make it to like the MLS. And so at that point, my strategy had changed anyway, because that built me up to that point where I was making about $20,000 a month at that point. And then when I left SEPTA, I said, okay, I didn't necessarily need more rentals. I wanted to have more earned income. So I said, well, I'm going to start flipping properties, right? So
when you say earned income, meaning what? Money in the bank versus money flowing every month type of thing?
So rental income is more passive. It's passive income. Earned income is like your job, what you go in. It is generally transactional, right? So I buy this for X, I sell it for Y, right? So that's taxed as earned income, right? Rentals are seen differently for tax purposes. I am not an accountant, blah, 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 but that's what it is. And so I wanted to make sure that I showed income. So a big part of my strategy still is I like to show I have a profitable business. I know there are real estate investors who don't want to show money. They don't want to pay any taxes.
Any reason for that specifically? Why you want to show, like you said before, there's a lot of people don't want to show their taxes. Why? Because they have to pay taxes, right? And you yourself, you could actually get away with not paying taxes in a way where, you can use depreciation, you can use, certain different alleyways and so forth that are legal, right? But it's actually said that you can use it. Just that's how the system works. So why did you just yourself did it and are still doing that?
Sure, because I want to be bankable. It's bankable. I want to go into a bank and know and be fairly certain that I'm going to get a loan, not just loans against property, but be able to get lines of credit, be able to, move into larger deals because I'm showing years of being profitable, right? I believe personally that, especially starting off, you have to understand where you are in your life cycle of being an investor. If you're at the beginning stages, you don't want to pay any taxes, you don't want to show any money, it's going to make it hard for you. It's going to make, so now you have to do all these creative things to try to get deals done. You got to partner with this person, got to do this with that person. I don't want to be that creative. I want to find a deal and go get the money.
Got it.
And honestly, a lot of times it's odd to me. I guess, again, sometimes people just follow advice without truly understanding if it applies to them personally.
Right.
But you've been paying taxes all the time. Why all of a sudden is it just so inconceivable to pay taxes? And there's ways to even limit that. And I'm not saying, and I'm not saying that you don't limit some of your tax burden, right? But you find a way to make it make sense. Okay, they're showing a decent income because there's going to be other things that you want to do. And if you're not showing income, how can you go to a bank and realistically ask them for whatever, $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, but you showed you made $20,000 last year, right? That doesn't make sense. And you wouldn't let somebody borrow, $1 million who made $20,000. It doesn't make sense. So you make the business more difficult for yourself with the only reason is I don't want to pay taxes. And I don't think that that's a fair trade-off. I don't think that makes sense.
So that makes sense. And so you're mentioning, being bankable. So meaning you are able to go to a bank and get different types of funding versus another person who's not bankable, right? Who doesn't have income coming in. And what does that mean? So meaning they're not paying taxes, meaning they're not paying their, day-to-day life in certain ways where it doesn't justify. So when you go to a bank, money technically becomes cheaper for you because you're getting better rates versus going to only hard money. You're now getting conventional loans and refinancing it. So you're what you're doing is, I understand, you're opening up new roads. You're opening up a lot more doors that other people wouldn't be able to access because you're showing your taxes. So and that kind of goes into the next question.
Just real quick, Jorgen. I just want to explain this to your viewers. So they're in the investment capital, right? For most refinances, it falls into two categories. One is the secondary market. The other is the primary market, or like small local banks. All right. Ask investors who only use secondary market lenders, which are lenders who are no doc lenders. So you don't have to show your tax returns. What happened when COVID hit? Those lenders dried up immediately.
Right.
Immediately they dried up. When COVID hit, the last day that they were, that you were allowed to even be in an office, like statewide, I did a refinance that had a multi-$100,000 cash out during COVID. Because
when you say cash out, meaning what? That you were able to put money in your pocket type of thing, where
that was after I paid off my original debt
purchase and renovation
equity that I pulled from that property during COVID. At a time where people who don't want to show their tax returns had to wait, scramble, figure it out. I still had the ability to refinance because I make myself bankable so I can go through regular underwriting. And I'm not saying you can't use the secondary market. It is appropriate for some things, but you don't want to have to be stuck using it because now you're stuck to the whims of that secondary market. And if you stop lending, now you're stuck. So it's just something to think about.
Definitely. Awesome. So now the next question is pretty much knowing what you know now, how would you start real estate? So meaning, you've shared a lot of things and now you're paying taxes. Would you be paying taxes prior to this? How would you structure it?
How would I start it differently than what I started?
Yep.
Number one, I would have gotten more information. I would have become more educated. So people focus on the money first. I understand that. They feel like that's what's missing the most. It is not. There is no lack of money out here, right? There's tons of money. There's tons of capital. What people generally lack is the knowledge and the ability to access that capital. And so you have to think of yourself in the knowledge that you learn. That's your conduit, right? You become the executor. You are how banks make money. You have the know-how and the knowledge. That's how investors, that is how private lenders are going to make money. So I would have invested more time in understanding real estate first. I probably made every conceivable mistake you could make. The difference is I had decided I wasn't going to quit no matter what. And I mean that, like, no, I'd had to be off this earth. I was not going to stop. So, but you don't have to have all of those issues, right?
Right.
If you take the time to get the information, figure out what is important to you, and don't start with money. Money is a bad reason to start. You need to start with a bigger reason. Why do you want to get into real estate? Not just for the hype, not just for the guy on Instagram or the woman standing next to the Lambo or the jet or some nonsense. But what is your real reason? Because you're not going to just jump right there. I'm telling you, it's not going to happen like that. You're going to go through some bumps. You're going to go through some bruises. You're going to go through obstacles. You're going to go through times where, you are uncertain of yourself. And so your why and your goal has to be big enough. And standing next to a Lambo truck, that ain't big enough.
So then is this pretty much, goes into our next question. Is this why, the multifamily conversion niche, is that how you found yourself, right? You were realizing that, hey, Lambos is great. All these materialistic things are great. But at the end of the day, you mentioned, something really important, which is, figuring out yourself, figuring out what exactly you're after, how can you grow within? And then, technically what happens is that when you start growing within, you start kind of like overspilling and, letting others as well grow around you, right? Because you're creating jobs and you're creating certain things. Your mindset is differently. Your family is viewing things differently. Your kids are viewing differently. As I understand, you have a daughter and a son, who are growing up, and you want to make sure that they are kind of realizing certain things out there that are possible and so forth. So, while through your process, since, you're 30 years old, 35, you quit your job, and then what, did you figure out that you're going to be doing multi-conversional niche at that point, or is it something that you figured out recently? How that worked out?
Sure. So it goes back to what I said earlier about being able to adapt to the economy. So back to what I said earlier, you were able to find properties easily, bank-owned properties. I was even able to find multifamily properties easily. Existing vacant multifamily properties that people just abandoned during the last collapse. My first 6-unit building that I ever owned was in Sharon Hill. It was bank owned. It was 6 units already set up. It just needed to work, right? And so that's what I did, and that's what I was buying. Around 2018, that too went away, right? People were not discounting multifamily properties, right? They were selling them at a premium because everybody was trying to get into the multifamily niche. There is a finite number of existing multifamily properties. So I said, well, and I had always been interested in the zoning in Philly. Didn't quite understand it, so I just said, well, let me see if I can understand this. And so what I figured out was, well, if I can identify properties that could be multifamily properties, right, even before they actually are multifamily properties, well, that's an excellent. Well, now I beat other investors to the punch. They're looking at it for what it is. I'm looking at it for what it could be. And so that opens up more options for myself. Right. So they can maybe only underwrite it as a single family property, where I may underwrite it as a triplex or a quadplex or even with like with what I'm doing now. I'm turning it into a 5-unit building, right? So it changes what the possibilities are. And so that's how I, honestly stumbled upon this niche. And what I realized is that what happens is it maximizes, and that's not even the right word for it, but it takes the burr system to a whole nother level, right? Where you do a single family house, you'll be happy to get maybe $10,000-$15,000 or something like that out of the deal, maybe, right? Where I would say probably my on average, I at least cash out 6 figures, right? And that's with them still cash flowing very well.
So pretty
And
much,
that's because I'm taking properties and bringing them to their highest and best use.
right. So then what you're doing is pretty much, for those who are viewing and not understanding clearly. So you're pretty much taking a property, right? Let's say, after repair value, it appraises for 600,000, but it took you, you bought it for 100, you put in, let's say, 250, right? You're at 350, and now it appraises at 600. So you're refinancing it. The bank is giving you, X amount of money, because I'm not sure what you're refinancing at, but let's say 80 cents on a dollar, 70 cents on a dollar, meaning, the bank wants to make sure there's some type of equity in the deal, right? The property appraises at 600,000, but they're willing to give you 400 or whatever it is, like 450. But guess what? You only spend 350, so you're able to take it 100,000, $200,000, depending on certain things. And that's pretty much what you realize, that hey, I can do this with a burr strategy, right? Buy, renovate, rent, repeat, with a multifamily conversions.
Yes.
And you pretty much stumble along by going and reading the documents, right? Reading what the city offers you. You found out these certain things, zoning and so forth. So you took the energy out, right? You are studying, you're learning, you're growing, and then you're like, you know what? I can do this.
Yes. I mean, and what it does is it takes the place, one good burr or one good multifamily conversion project could be the equivalent of 5 or 6 single family projects, right?
Yeah.
You're focusing on one property, and then the growth, you have a better potential of growth and equity in that property, because if it's a true commercial product, then it's getting valued on the income.
Yep.
Whereas if it's a single family property, you're going to be capped at whatever the local market is. You can make it as beautiful as you want, but you're not going to get any more than what the area is selling.
Right, whatever the neighborhood is selling, that 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom, that specific thing that you created, they're pretty much, the banks are going and they're appraising it based on other properties inside the area, next block, and within the radius of whatever the bank will appraise it on. That's interesting. So with now multifamily homes, and I know like specifically you invest in Philadelphia. Now are banks going out further out than they would with the single family homes to get you that appraisal value?
It's a totally different animal. It's nothing like single family. When you get into multifamily, throw single family out of your head. Multifamily is based on true. So let me just clarify. True commercial multifamily, which is 5 units and up, or a property that's less than 5 units, but it has a commercial component to it, a retail space or something like that. And it's not the bank. So the bank, there's 3 parties in there, right? So it is the investor, there's the bank, and there is the appraiser. It's the appraiser who gives the value. It's not the bank. So it's the appraiser. They go out and they look to see similar projects. And radius doesn't matter in multifamily. Similar projects, they're gonna apply a cap rate to your product. What product is similar to what you have, looks like yours, built like yours? That could be anywhere, right? And this is not my opinion of it. I've done a lot of appraisals, and that's what's on the appraisals, right? They don't just go down the street. They'll go all over the city to find a similar project.
Wow.
And then they attach that cap rate. And once they have that cap rate, they apply that cap rate to whatever your net operating income is. And then that's how you come up with your value. And so you're able to more accurately create the value with the true multifamily properties.
And since like I've met you, but one thing I've learned about you is that you don't take no for an answer. So meaning when an appraiser comes in and values it lower, you actually don't mind challenging the appraiser, right? A lot of people don't even understand that's possible, and you actually go ahead and do that.
Yeah, I think you challenge anybody. I've challenged the bank. I mean, so here's the thing, right? You have to look at yourself, and this is what I tell investors. Very careful. You have to. It's how you see yourself.
Right.
In that whole equation, I'm the talent. Yes, they have the money, but I'm the talent. Yep. My talent is what makes your money more money.
Right.
My talent is where you can put your money safely, right? And you can make a return. So once you understand your position, the bank is not doing you any favors, right? Investors are not doing you any favors. I appreciate the investment. I don't want to sound like I don't appreciate it, but they're not doing you a favor. Right? You are providing a service.
It's business.
You are turning their money into more money. Most people, how smart they are, doctors, lawyers, whatever, they don't understand that. They understand what they understand. They understand how to do medicine. They understand how to practice law. They couldn't turn a quarter into a dollar. They don't know how to do it, right? Most people, they have been taught to find a brokerage, give your money to the brokerage, leave that for the big boys. Let somebody else do it for you, right? Let them do the thinking for you, and you just go back to work and do your thing. And then that's really your true talent is, hey, listen, like, I'm the talent here, right? I can and I can take my talent anywhere. You know?
Makes sense. Yeah. I agree. No, I agree with you. So you said something interesting, so like doctors and so forth, people who specialize in their job, their work field, they're good at that part. And now a lot of times they have money that they want to invest, but they don't have the time, right? Because like you're doing this full time, and you're also able to learn new skill sets. You're able to learn how the city works, how the zoning works, and so forth, right? Like a doctor, his skill set is to learn further medicine, to grow, to evolve as a doctor, right? He doesn't have time to go ahead and like find out what the zoning is and manage contractors. And I always say the same thing over and over again. Contractors are the biggest risk in the business. You can buy it right. You can buy the most cheapest property possible, but if you get burnt on a contractor, the deal might die. And like you said before, people are investing in you for your skill set. And I know you also raise private capital to fund your deals, and doctors, lawyers, and so forth. I do the same thing, and I realize I have a lot of friends that are making a good amount of money, and they're like, I want to get into flip. And I'm like, really? I'm like, how much does the flip will give you a return? They're like, well, a lot of money. And I'm like, what is a lot? In reality, it's 10 to 50%. Now, but that's a really intensive, investment. What you're offering pretty much is be like letting banks, invest their money into you, but at the same time, you're using your skill set, your time, your knowledge to grow their money and your money at the same time. So everybody's benefiting.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're doing all the groundwork. They're just adding money. And I don't want to minimize, but quite frankly, there are many more banks than there are qualified investors. People who actually are competent, know what they're doing, have some structure, have some
accredited investors, pretty much. Yeah.
Well, not accredited investors. No, I'm talking about real estate investors. So, I mean, there are people all the time who talk about that they buy properties, but they're winging it. They're winging it until, sooner or later, the market will catch them, right? And I don't want to make it seem like I have a perfect process. I don't, but I do have a process. There is structure to what I do, right? And so there are there's much more capital in the world than there is investors who know what they're doing. And if you focus on becoming good at what you do, don't just focus on the money.
Yeah.
Real estate's not going anywhere. Money's not going anywhere. If you become good, excellent at what you do, the money will find you hands down. But most people don't want to take the time to become excellent, right?
Yeah,
they want to do two properties, and now I'm an expert. Like, come on, man, you haven't faced any obstacles yet, right?
Yeah, even yourself, you got really good, but you're still learning, you're still educating. The next question we're gonna have is pretty much, how do you educate someone? How do you like learn and start the books you're reading? So you continuously, thriving. And I understand. So right now you have 60 active doors, and you're working on another 100 doors future income. And I understand that's 2 projects, or is it a multiple projects? How many projects is that total?
Yeah, it's multiple projects. 74 of those are ground up projects, and the rest are rehabs. Yeah, it's probably about six or 7 rehabs, something like that.
Wow. So you have a lot of different projects going on. And how are you able to manage so many, right? You're one person. How is it that Dan can split up in so many different areas and so many different fields?
That's a great question. I do it through delegation and through structure. So my main focus is not how many doors I'm buying. My main purpose right now is creating a sustainable business, a real business, something that's going to be here when my children are older and they can come in and it's not chaos and craziness and, oh, I caught this deal and I bought it and I don't know what I'm doing. And I bought another deal and I don't know what I'm doing. No, structure, right? This is what we do. This is what we're good at. This is how we make money, right? And so that's the biggest focus right now, right? I look at it like, okay, I'm fairly young, right? So I'm 40. I hope to be around for some time. I don't need to buy every door. I don't need that. What I need is to create a real business, right? So that I can grow and I can scale in a way that makes sense. I can't tell you why I've seen scale and it implodes on itself, right? Because there's no foundation, there's no structure. Again, every deal is just different. It's like, I don't know, I don't know what I'm doing. And every deal is different. But when you have a process, okay, this is what we do. This is who we call. This is what we do next. This is what we do next. Bang, 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 bang. There's structure there, right? And
are you following anything? Like, how are you figuring out the structure, right? So you figured that out. We spoke about finding your own character. You found your own character. You found the niche of multifamily conversions and so forth. And now you're talking about something that people don't really realize, that there's 2 different things between real estate investor and real estate business.
Yes.
And what you're doing right now is you're focusing on a business aspect where, God forbid something happens to you, or you go away for a month, let's say somewhere else. Will the business go up or will it go down, right? That is really what a business is. If you remove yourself from the equation, can it sustain or even do better without you? And how are you doing? Like, what are you focusing? Like, what are you doing? Or like, what would you suggest somebody starting off, the path of, hey, I want to become a real estate investor. Now they're finding out there's a real estate business, right? What is a real estate business and how does it consist of?
Sure. So what I'm doing is I pay to get into the pocket of other people. So I have mentors and business people that I pay. Lawyers, accountants, strategists, right? And I tell them what my vision is and they help me craft my vision. I pay for that, period.
Wow.
There is no, yes, could I maybe figure it out on my own? And maybe, but here's the thing. I want to get to the goal faster. I don't want to recreate something that's already there because I feel like I don't want to pay. And I get it. And I understand everybody's money is not the same. So I'm not saying you got to pay for everything, but you have to, don't look at just the cost. Look at what it gets you. What doesn't get you closer to your goal. I don't mind. I understand for where I am, I probably spend more money than an investor doing similar deals. But the question is, will that other investor be here 10 years later?
Right.
They may seem to be at the same spot right now. I'm not worried about right now. Right now, and I'm good. I'm worried about 5 years, 10 years, 15 years later. will I still have a business? Will I still be growing? Or at least maintaining what I have. And so I prefer to focus on the business. I will buy units. I will buy property. I don't get caught up in that because you can. And I mean, I've done it. Oh, so and so bought this many. I need to buy this many more. And nobody knows what they're doing. Like, everybody's racing, but nobody knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
And so I prefer instead to focus on structure, focus on the business, focus on longevity.
Love it.
And I pay for that.
That's awesome. So pretty much what I'm realizing is that, so, you know, you realize that there's no point of reinventing the wheel, right? If somebody has already perfected something and they're already doing it, they already know what it is, you don't mind paying them their time, right? That's a lot of people don't realize, is that, you know, we'll go out and to a restaurant and we'll pay 20% gratuity, whatever it is, a tip. And if the service is bad, we'll just still pay it. But then when it comes to an accountant or a broker that, you know, will charge you 6%, they're like, oh, I'm not going to pay that. But they're making you money, right? Versus you paying for a liability, you're focusing on assets, and you actually don't mind spending the money because you're willing to pay for their time. And, you know, something that I've learned is like, well, why one lawyer charges $500 an hour, another one charges $50 an hour, right? You're not really paying for the time, you're paying for their knowledge, right? And same thing with you.
Absolutely. So what you're really talking about on a higher level is a mindset. So there's two different mindsets, right? And I had a presentation about this a long time ago, but there is a working person mindset, and then there is a business person mindset. And so working person mindset, and this is not talking down about anybody, because I've been and I had the mindset. The mindset is, well, I could do that myself, you know. And the idea is you're gonna push down costs to some unbelievable level. It's not scalable. It is not realistic. Yep. So there's only so many things that you could possibly do by yourself. At some point, it stops making sense. And there's only so much you can push down costs where the quality won't make sense. And like you said, there's a big difference between hiring a $500 lawyer. I don't even know if a $50 lawyer. I wouldn't even talk to a $50 lawyer. I'd be afraid. I figure just by the conversation, I would end up in prison or something. I don't want to hear none of this. But
they are out there, so you got to be careful.
But what I will say, and I'll use something that investors would know. It's like picking anything, but I'll use this one thing. So picking architect simply on the cost is foolish. Absolutely foolish. Because what happens is, what could happen is that the lower price architect may not know what the hell they're doing. So you get these plans back. It looks good because you don't know, because you're not an architect. This looks like plans, right? And you submit your plans, it gets kicked back. Right? Hey, this, right? You're like, okay, well, like, why don't my lower price architect know this? You send it back to the architect, send it back. Again, another comment, right? So now what have you saved? Because whatever the project is, you know, you're still paying interest, right? You still have to, keep the property up. You still have to pay the bills, right? You wind up not saving anything. If anything, it wind up costing you money. Oh, they forgot to do this. They forgot to put that in there, right? And that's just one example. That could be contractors. That could be anybody. If you're solely choosing your vendors or your contractors by cost alone, you are headed for a headache. It's only a matter of time. It's not if, it's just when. You look at value, not just cost.
So Dan, you spoke about cost is definitely not a way to, hire somebody, and, you don't want to deal with somebody that's $50 an hour lawyer that most likely he will get you more trouble than he'll get you out of it. So then how do you screen, and how would you suggest for people to find, we're not even talking about contractors, right? How do you find an accountant or lawyer and so forth? Like, well, how do you, if it's not based on price, what is?
Sure. So one thing we have not discussed is networking and the power of networking, right? if you want to be an investor or really in any business, it's not who you know, it's who knows you, right? You want to meet people that are playing, in the same field that you're in. It can save you a lot of headaches. So number one, you can ask the people in that are active in that field, hey, who do you recommend I use? Or if you're uncertain, say, hey, listen, have you heard of these guys? Listen, like they say, bad news travels fast. So you show somebody a bad contract, a bad architect, and they like, you get the like that first, you know what it is. I don't even,
Oh yeah,
you
I've
don't
had that. I've had
you don't
that.
have to
Yeah.
explain anything else. But if you are in like the idea that I'm gonna just do this by myself, I'm not telling anybody anything. You won't have the opportunity to learn from other people, right? That's one of the greatest resources is other people's experiences, right? So you say, hey, listen, have you used this person? Have you used this? Oh yeah, they were excellent. They did a great job. It was done on time. It was done well, done promptly. Well, maybe that's why they cost 10% more,
Right.
right?
So it sounds like networking it would be the solution to really figuring out who's who and who's good and who's bad.
So I would never call anything a solution. It's a tool, right? So it's a tool. There's no guarantees. Period. You could do all the networking that you want and still wind up with a crappy whatever, right? But it can mitigate the chances. It can certainly limit it much more than if you decide, hey, I'm over here by myself and I don't want anybody to know what I'm doing and blah blah whatever story it is that you're telling yourself.
Yeah.
You certainly have a much better opportunity of things going well if you work with other people.
No, I agree. I agree with you. And
Yeah,
it's funny to say because like sometimes like people are like, oh, who's your contractor? And I'm like, to be honest with you, like it's not that I'm afraid to share my contractor, but it doesn't mean he's gonna be good for you, right? Like you gotta
yeah,
find, yeah. It's like today, and again, like even a person who's good today could be bad tomorrow. Why? He has his own life, he has his own family, things come up, he could be mismanaging his money, whatever it is,
mm-hmm.
vouching for somebody is definitely, but like, it's funny you say that because I had an electrician that do work my property, and then I had a different investor walk through and kind of just want to see what kind of he would suggest. I said, "Oh, this guy was working, but I'm never gonna use him again." He goes, "Ah, yeah, that guy. I know exactly what you're talking about." So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's funny because the real estate is such a small world. Like it's insane how small it is. Like people really
It
do
is.
know each other.
Oh, absolutely. It is absolutely a small world of active investors. That's why it is important to get out there and really network. That's why it's also very important to do what you say you're going to do.
Yeah,
People learn who to avoid and who not to do business with, who doesn't do what they say they're going to do. So one part of it is going out there and definitely meeting the other players, and the other part is be a stand-up person and follow through on your word even when it's no longer convenient. That's the
yeah.
important part. Anybody can follow up on their word when things are going great.
Well
Great.
said. I like that. Yeah,
When it's no longer convenient for you, will you keep your word? And I think that's the true test of character. And unfortunately, most people do what is most expedient and not
convenient.
what, yeah, and not what has long term implications, right? So I mean, doing a deal that goes bad is not the worst thing in the world. I've done deals that didn't go well, right?
Right.
But everybody stood up. We took our bumps, and I didn't try to. Well, this is really your fault, so I'm going to try. No,
Yeah.
we all lost money. So, yeah, it is what it is. We're going to learn from this. We're going to move forward. All right. I'm not trying to find a way to weasel you out of a couple of bucks so I lose a little bit less and you lose a little bit more. And that speaks to your character. That speaks to who you are. Right. And so that is very important to the longevity of your career.
Yeah, and then like yeah, I love it. I agree with you pretty much. You have to be a stand-up guy, right? You have to be a stand-up woman, whatever it is, and you have to stick by your word. And a lot like you can't point fingers. Like I've had contractors that went bad, they burned me, but I didn't point fingers. I didn't get upset. I started screaming at them. You figure out whatever it is, and you can move forward. And a lot of times, by blaming somebody, they get defensive. So if you want to be, on offense, you want to
Mhm.
provide value versus start, blaming each other. And it really, and it sounds like throughout the time you build character now within yourself, but people around you. And so, it goes back to what you mentioned before is, mindset. And the next question is pretty much, what are your top three books that you would recommend? And, why, is that something that builds up your mindset? And what was it? You love
Yeah. So mindset would be top of the list for anybody looking to gain financial freedom. We all, for the most part, have been taught ideas that are counterproductive to becoming financially free.
Yeah.
They just are. So I had
Yeah.
to literally almost unlearn a lot of stuff and then relearn things. So there is Think and Grow Rich. Everybody knows that, right? And as
I'm actually rereading it
often
right now. One,
as I'm sorry, was that?
I'm actually rereading it right now as we speak. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's an amazing.
So as often as people tout that book, it's an awesome book. It doesn't even teach you any strategies. It's a mindset book. It's a mindset book because you have to first get this right before you do anything. Before you do anything, you got to get your mind right. There's plenty of people, athletes, actors, people in music that made a lot of money, lose it because their thought process never evolved to where the money was.
Yep.
Right? Um, there is what is that?
Where's that word that I think you mentioned was
Yeah.
one of the,
No, it's the one about not giving a f. What is that?
oh, the,
That's the subtle art of not giving a fuck. Yeah, that's a great
yeah.
book. Awesome book. I don't know if you can cuss on this thing, but
It is what it is.
yeah, it is what it is. Yeah. So awesome book. Again,
Right.
it challenges a lot of the norms.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the ways that we think are our ideas are not our ideas. It's somebody else's ideas that have just been repeatedly told to you. And so you accept them as yours. But you've never truly challenged them. Most people never truly challenge those things. And so they never grow. And so they just become sort of, bad copies of bad copies of bad copies, right? And they don't have their own identity. So I thought that was an awesome book. That's by Mark Manson.
Yeah.
And there's another book I read. It's called Think and Grow Rich, A Black Choice. So Think and Grow Rich is by Napoleon Hill.
Yeah.
Great writer. Now there was a black guy by the name of Dennis Kimbrough. He is a professor, and so basically he just took those same concepts and just applied it to the black experience, right? But anybody can find value in the book. So again, and like you said, there's a ton of other books. I like the 48 Laws of Power. Again, these things teach you. So I just got to keep an eye on my son. These things teach you how to think, how to be a critical thinker, right? How to think beyond just your emotional state. And I would definitely tell people that should be top on your list, right? If you want to change as a person, if you want to make more money, have better friendships or better relationships, work on yourself more than you work on anything, and those things, and you will grow.
Love it. I agree with you. No, I definitely, over the weekend there was an expo in Philadelphia, and you were yourself spoken it, and I had the privilege as well speaking. I'm still a newbie, and my pretty much speaking was, how do you buy your first property? And majority of the time I spoke about was awareness, right? Like really building your mindset, really understanding financial education, really understanding why would you quit your job and what does it take to quit your job, and all these things, I definitely like the books you mentioned. I've read those books probably at least 5 times,
Mhm.
and someone once told me is like if you reread a book that you read before and you didn't learn anything new, that means you haven't grown since you read it the first time.
Absolutely perfect. That was a point that I was going to make. Those
Yeah.
books, they're not like fiction, where you just kind of run through them really quickly. So even when you read them, the way I read it and I sit and I think about what I just read.
Yeah.
Just think about it. Like,
Yeah.
okay, like what does this mean? How does it apply to my life? I'm not just reading through it just to get through it,
Yep.
right? I think about it and I underline things that I find to be interesting. And again, like you mentioned, I will reread the book. And it's interesting to see what I found to be interesting the first time. But what always happens, always, is that I will find something new the second time. Because again, now I'm in a different place. I'm in a different awareness. I have different exposure. So my antennas are picking up more information. Because
Yes.
people receive like where they are, not necessarily where you are giving the information at. Sometimes it takes time, and that's perfectly fine, right?
Yep.
That person may already be here, so the information that they're putting down is like, whoo, it's really heavy, and you may not be able to. You may not, and you will most likely not absorb all of those jewels the first time around, and that's perfectly fine. That's normal. You reread those books again, you take some notes, you'll be surprised how it hits you differently the second and third time.
Ooh, well said. Yes. Yes. There's, every time I reread the book, and like right now, I'm even reading the, Think and Grow Rich, and I'm like, wow, I forgot about this chapter completely,
Mhm.
and the chapter talks about write down how much, what exactly you're after, and how are you gonna get it, right? Because like I realized I was talking to a friend of mine, and he's like, well, I'm gonna get a G wagon, be a Mercedes, da, da, da. And I'm like, great, and like I was like, wow, like you've been mentioning a lot of times. I'm like, so what exactly are you gonna do to get it? He's like, well, I never really thought about it. I'm like, wow. And at that point, I realized there's a difference between dreams and there's goals, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like, yeah, in the book it mentions write down what your goal is, and then as well as write down how you're gonna get it. Like, what are you gonna do to sacrifice to get it? And you mentioned
Yeah.
before, there's things you gotta sacrifice. There's things that you put down Netflix. You go out and you do full. You do your 9 to 5. You go overtime as you've been doing many times. You take every overtime possible. Then you lose some sleep and you go out and make sure the projects are running. Things are moving slow. Wow. And you don't quit your job just because you wanted to quit your job. You quit your job because you wanted to grow. And would you say that these books were able to allow you to grow?
Absolutely. Yeah. Every single one of those. I mean, there are a ton, more books, but the mindset is going to be the biggest variable that you have that's going to move you forward or keep you stuck. And the people you spend time around matters a lot. If they themselves are they growing or are they staying stagnant? The conversation, one way you can tell is if the conversation is the same thing they've been talking about for forever, or all they want to do is talk about the good old days, because that means nothing's happening now. If all I can do is talk about what I did in my 20s, that means I'm not doing anything right now. I had a great time in my 20s, right? but I'm enjoying myself now and I have new challenges. It's not the same. It is, things are different, but I'm enjoying what I'm doing now. So I'm not stuck in the past and talking about, glory days when I feel like I still have really good days going on now and in my future. So I don't have to keep looking backwards.
So then I got a question for you, and this is actually something I've been thinking about myself. Like, how do the people around you sometimes like, people do get stuck in the past. People do get stuck in, their current awareness, about not growing. And like I'm finding out that like sometimes that I don't really find similar conversations, or even the things I used to be interested in no longer interest me because I'm just kind of grown within, and I have different passions, that let's say. Like, how are you surrounding yourself with, like-minded people? And the people that are not changing or not being like-minded, they were before, you mentioned before, they're still talking about the 20s, and they're not really adapting to, the future of growing up. What exactly have you done anything about it, or is it just kind of like something just kind of happens? Like,
So I'll start with the last question first. How do I deal with people who don't grow? In my experience, they deal with themselves.
yeah,
They will separate from you. You don't have to do or say anything. What happens is, if you're not interested in talking about whatever, some nonsense or all day, or I don't only want to just talk about sports, or I don't only want to just talk about going out drinking and getting drunk, or I don't only just want to, whatever, right?
yeah,
If there's no growth, because what happens is, once you start to grow, once you open up that door, that's it. You don't go back in. And so you want to have conversations about growth. You want to have conversations about mindset. You want to have conversations about goals. And if those individuals feel like that's not what they want to talk about, they're going to get rid of themselves. That has been my experience. I haven't had to explicitly stop dealing with anyone. They
that makes sense.
pull themselves away.
Yeah, yeah,
So that has been my experience there. On the other side, I am extremely selective about who I spend time with. It's just important. I mean,
yeah, 100%.
and you have to give yourself that permission. You don't have to hang around people. Like, there's no law. You don't have to be rude about it, but you don't have to, right? You don't have to let everybody, let everyone into your life. And so I am extremely careful about who I am around, because not everybody wants to see you do well. Let's just be honest about it. People will give lip service. What I've seen, people are happy as long as they feel like you are generally in the same boat, right? Around the same place. But they feel like you move here, that's a problem. Because then it's not even about you, in my opinion, it's about them, and it's about that self-reflection. Because now they got to figure out, man, I was in the same position as this guy. Why is it? And they're never going to really. That's a hard conversation for people to have with themselves. So it's easier to make you the bad guy. Dan is just about money. He's I don't want to.
He's changed. Dan has changed.
You changed. You're damn right I changed. You're damn right I changed. And I hope I keep changing. You understand how that's a ridiculous assertion to make changing to be a bad thing, to have a negative connotation. You changing. It's crazy, but it is a tool. It's a weapon that people, especially people you've known for a long time, childhood friends, family, it's a tool they use so that you handcuff yourself. So you say, oh, no, man, I'm still the same guy. Let's go out and get drunk and do whatever. I'm still the same dude. And you sitting here trying to prove this. You're trying to prove that you're the same. It's ridiculous. Doesn't make sense. And I say that because I've been there. I'm not saying that because I didn't go there and I saw it for what it was. I'm saying it because I have allowed that narrative to slow me down until I said, hold on. Doesn't make any sense. Like, what am I doing? I got nothing to prove to anybody except myself.
Love it. No, yeah, I agree with you. One of my close friends from junior high school, he was like, you gotta slow down, man. Like, you're working too much. I was like, whoa, like that's not definitely want to hear those things. I'd rather hear positive things. Like, wow, you're doing a great job. I know you're working really hard, but like, slow down. People tell me to slow down. It's kind of and that's that reason why I asked that question is, and I realized you're right. People just kind of start falling in love with themselves. They don't find anything to talk to you about because you're talking about things that they don't want to talk about, or they have no interest.
Or they can't really add any value to, right? And it's not even that you're trying to talk above them. It's just that they're not interested in making themselves better.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm not interested personally in trying to force somebody to become better. I tried that. Like that doesn't work. You can't
Yeah,
want it for people more than they want it for themselves.
yeah.
It is impossible. It
Yeah,
is.
go do your thing.
Oh, could we?
Yeah, go ahead, do your thing. Yeah. So it's funny that Dan mentions that is that I actually see it myself, and it's actually the most selfish thing you can do, right? What does that mean to be selfish? It's by asking somebody to change. I realize that if you want to change, you can change yourself, right? But you need to want to change it, whatever it is going on in your life. And it's funny that like I have people around me and I'm like, well, they're not doing this right, they're not doing this right, they should be doing this, they should be doing that. And it's funny because I realize I am projecting things I should be doing myself. So I'm putting on people and saying, hey, you're doing it wrong. You should do this. And I'm like, no, those are things I should be doing. Those things I need to do. And every time I try to change somebody and tell somebody that they should do something, and I realize I'm like, that's the most selfish thing because everybody's beautiful the way they are, right? Everybody's their own character. Everybody's their own individual. And by me saying that something is wrong, something is not right, something needs to be changed within you is super selfish because I am asking something that the other person does not need to do. They're perfect the way they are. And then the day you realize like, well, you know what? Not something that you can continuously do. And and then I was mentioning before that people, it's a very selfish thing to ask somebody to change. The most selfish thing is to ask somebody to change. And I don't want to take any more of your time. Then thank you for coming out. Before we let you go and back to your son. Again, you have the most. Oh, look at that.
Yeah.
How's everything?
All right, let me finish up, baby.
Oh, Dan, again, thank you again for coming out and sharing knowledge. I agree completely with you. Mindset is definitely a powerful thing. For those who want to link up with Dan, the real estate man, here are his information. Make sure you go ahead and link up. Dan, do you want to wrap up or mention something that we might not have covered? Is there anything that specifically, and what is the best way to get into contact with you?
Sure. So some of the best ways to follow me, at least for video content right now, is on Facebook. And that's Dan, the Real Estate Man. That's Dan, the Real Estate Man on Facebook. On IG, it's Dan, the Real Estate Man 1. It's Dan, the Real Estate Man 1, because I lost the password to Dan, the Real Estate Man. And the website is www.dantherealestateman.biz. I will say I do have some big things coming up for next year as far as projects and as far as opportunities for people to learn from me directly. I will be holding boot camps on the multifamily conversion niche. So if you want to learn about that process, if you want to figure out how you could possibly utilize that process, Yark has been through it. So, he knows sort of the quality and everything that we go through there. Just keep an eye out for those opportunities. So they will be coming out shortly.
Love it. Yeah, Dan, thanks again for coming out. And yeah, as Dan mentioned, I did go through a boot camp. It was amazing. It was a 3-day event, as I remember. We went out to see your properties. You are real. That's what I'm trying to get to. Is you are real. I saw your properties. I saw your renovations. You're doing some crazy things. I saw the horse stable that you purchased, and you're creating into a multifamily, which is mind blowing how that's even possible. Or wrapping it around. And you found your character. You found your niche. You're doing it. You're being active. You're not actually scared of getting things done. And yeah, Dan, thank you for coming out. We had some comments here. Just go through. Hone mentioned, real estate equals Lambo.
Actually, the thing is that it certainly could. It certainly could, but
yeah,
I don't think that's the focus.
Yeah, he also mentioned people like mindset books because it makes them feel good. The danger is since they already feel good, they often don't take action. Well said, sir. And book recommendation that he says is Retire Young, Retire Rich, Unwriting the Devil, How to Stop Worrying and Living. Yeah, so that's Hone. He's definitely another investor in the area. So yeah, Dan, I don't want to take up any more of your time. Everybody, make sure you reach out. Dan went out and he's part of your network now. Go ahead and reach out and be a part of his network. Follow him on IG. Make sure you follow him on Facebook. He has a lot of information, definitely a lot of knowledge that he's sharing. So go ahead and do that. Dan, again, thank you for coming out. Thank you for your time.
Thanks
Thank
for
you for
having
going
me, Eric. I
over
appreciate
time.
it, buddy. This was
Definitely.
great.
Awesome. Let's do it again sometime soon. Take care, brother.
All right. Bye.